Okay, so Apple's latest earnings report is out, and it's not just about the numbers. It's really the start of a whole new chapter for the company. We're talking about a massive strategic shift, and it all boils down to one thing: AI.
For months, the big question on everyone's mind, especially on Wall Street, was pretty simple. Is the iPhone done? Has Apple's biggest moneymaker finally run out of steam in a world where pretty much everyone already has a smartphone?
And at the same time, another storm was brewing. This one was in China. You had these incredibly strong local players like Huawei really coming on strong. The feeling was that Apple wasn't just losing its grip on that huge market, it was in a free fall.
But maybe the biggest worry, the one that really got people talking, was about AI. I mean, here's Apple, the company that basically invented the modern smartphone, and the story everywhere was that they were getting left in the dust in the generative AI race. They were just late. Well, this earnings report, it answered all those questions. And the answer wasn't just no, it was a huge, emphatic no. What these numbers really show is an absolutely brilliant strategic move where Apple took every single one of those so-called weaknesses and turned them into its greatest strengths.
So, let's dive into the first big idea here. We're calling it Apple's AI Supercycle. It's all about how they totally re-engineered their business around intelligence.
Okay, first, the headline number. It is absolutely staggering. $143.8 billion in revenue for a single quarter. That's a 16% jump from last year, and it just crushed all the expectations out there. And if you look at where that money's coming from, yep, the iPhone is still king. It's almost 60% of their sales. But here's the twist. The reason it's dominating has totally changed. We're not talking about people upgrading for a slightly better camera anymore. It's all about the AI.
So how'd they pull it off? It was this really clever three-step play. First, they roll out Apple Intelligence features that are actually, useful, stuff people want. Second, and this is the key, they made it so you need the new hardware with 12 gigs of RAM to even run it. So what happens? Boom, step 3, you trigger this huge upgrade cycle. Suddenly, for millions of people, getting a new phone wasn't just a want, it was a need.
All right, so let's take that idea of the AI supercycle and see what it did in the one place everyone was freaking out about, China. Because this quarter, China went from being Apple's biggest problem to its biggest win.
And this chart, wow, it just lays it all out. Look at that. After sliding for a while, Greater China didn't just bounce back, it exploded. 38% growth. That completely blows away the growth in Europe and the Americas, which, by the way, was still really, really good.
So what was the secret sauce in China? Well, while Huawei and others were building AI that was very specific to local apps, Apple went a different route. They offered a single global AI ecosystem that was consistent, secure, and powerful no matter where you were. And for that high-end Chinese buyer, that promise of stability and privacy, that was the winning ticket.
And the results? Apple is back on top. They took back the #1 spot in the biggest smartphone market on the planet, grabbing almost 22% of it. You just can't argue with that. It's a huge win. Now, this whole comeback story hinges on Apple Intelligence. And what's really interesting is that Apple Intelligence itself was powered by a totally unexpected partnership, a real game changer, where they chose to be smart instead of proud.
See, instead of trying to build a massive, world-knowing AI from the ground up, Apple did something really pragmatic. They said, hey, Google, you guys are great at answering questions about, the world. We'll use your Gemini model for that. But, and this is the Apple part, all of your personal stuff, your private data, that stays on your device processed by Apple's own secure models. It's literally the best of both worlds.
And the change was instant. I mean, think about Siri. It went from getting complex questions right about half the time, which is basically useless, to a 92% success rate. All of a sudden, Siri wasn't a party trick anymore. It became a seriously powerful tool, practically overnight. And this really sums up Apple's new game plan perfectly. They're not in the business of building the giant AI engines. They're the harvester. They control the endpoint, that device in your pocket. That's the most valuable real estate. From there, they can just pick and choose the best tech from everyone else and weave it seamlessly into their world.
But there's always a but, right? This incredible success, this newfound dominance, it casts a very long shadow. And with that kind of power comes a whole lot of attention, especially from governments. The regulatory risk for Apple has never been bigger.
I mean, we're talking about a war on multiple fronts. The EU has already kicked off a new investigation. And here in the US, there's a massive antitrust trial with the Department of Justice set for 2027. These aren't just small fights on the side. This is the main event. And these aren't just little problems they can brush off. These are threats to the very core of their business. Regulators could force them to open up the App Store. That would be a huge blow to their services revenue. They could even try to break down that whole walled garden ecosystem. You add rising costs and global politics to the mix, and you realize these risks are now baked into the company's future.
So that's what it all comes down to, really. This quarter, Apple basically proved they've solved the business problem. They figured out how to beat their competitors in hardware, in China, and even in AI. But by becoming so powerful, they might have created an even bigger problem for themselves with regulators. And that leaves us with the big question going forward. Who is Apple's biggest rival now? Is it another tech company, or is it the governments of the world?